My name is Ashok Kamath and I'm the secretary of the IIT Alumni Center in Bengaluru. This is our continuation of our Saturday webinars, which we've been doing since the middle of April, every Saturday at 5 o'clock. And today we have an interesting and fascinating topic of current interest, which is 5G telecommunications. And we're privileged to have two very outstanding people who have worked deeply in this area. First, of course, is Sanjay Mashruwala, who's the managing director of Reliance Infocom Limited right now, and they are very much in the news, as you would have seen. Sanjay is a graduate of IIT Bombay and then went to UT Austin to do his master's, and then came back to India, and since 1981 he has been with Reliance. The other speaker for the evening is Professor Abhay Karandikar, who did his master's and PhD from IIT Kanpur, and then taught for a very long time at IIT Bombay before going back to his alma mater as the director. Professor Karandikar was also the chairman of the Telecom Standards Development Society of India, in fact, the founding chairman, and is, continues to be very actively involved in it, and is, probably India's leading expert on 5G technologies. To help us do the moderation, we've been fortunate to have Arnob Roy, founder and COO of Tejas Networks. Arnob is Bangalore-based and very active with us especially on communications, and he's going to do the moderating between the two sessions. Few housekeeping issues. Whatever questions the attendees have, please put it in the Q&A bucket at the bottom right of your screen, because that's where we will be looking for questions and answers. Try not to put it in the chat box. The Q&A is where the moderators look for the questions, and will use that to ask the questions of the panelists. In the past webinars, many people have asked us for certificates, and there is no certificate associated with these webinars. This is our contribution to get well-known experts to talk to everyone and share the knowledge. It's not for, you can't get a certificate from an IIT for 1.5 hours. So at this point, I'll ask Sanjay to take over and do his presentation, and he will be sharing his screen, and the rest of us will go off video so that Sanjay has the floor right now.
Good evening. So, talks about somewhat more deeper and complex to create some perspective of what mobile telecom or telecom in general is all about. People, humans, realize one of the reasons of money, but they also immediately realize the limitation while their voice gestures could be seen or heard, travel long distance, and this over longer distance or communicate. These tricks methods were developed to attempt to communicate over distance. Yeah, so essentially the methods used for communicating signals over a somewhat longer distance beyond the shouting distance were developed, but they had very obvious limitations. And that is where of distance, of security, of speed, of skill, and so on. Really speaking, if we talk about communication, there are 5 major KRAs or considerations that we need to have. We always used to develop the telecom technology over the years. Today, we call them coverage, speeds, security or encryption, user friendliness, and of course, the end of the day tariff. And as we go along the development, you would see how these 5 key requirements were and improved over the period. But realistically, the telecommunication development did not happen till industrial revolution started and the so-called newer technologies started coming in existence. Particularly in case of telecom, the first necessity was electricity. After that, magnetism, and so on and so forth over the years, till eventually in 1837, the first telegraph was developed that could carry the signals or that could convey the signals over a longer distance. However, the first model was not really a very what we would call a simple or user-friendly model. It did not become very common or popular. And the credit for creating a really common and commercial system for telegraphy goes to Samuel Morse, who patented this in 1837. And truly, the real technology breakthrough happened when he came up with this digital communication using just 2 symbols of dash and dot, though at that time, he didn't really call it digital the way we call it today. What happened? The coverage improved. Now you could send the signals for a longer distance. The speed improved. It was more secure. Now everybody could not simply go and see what you were trying to, or hear what you were trying to convey. It was still very user-friendly. You needed skills. And the cost, of course, was very, very high in the early days. As the time progressed, people started working on conveying voice, communicating over voice rather than signals. And people started working, parallel development started for telephones. Again, though number of people demonstrated this technology, eventually Alexander Bell ended up getting the first patent, and so he is credited with the invention of telephone. Now, over the years, the telephone technology continued to improve. And so many improvements happened. Symbolically, we could show these over the way the telephone instruments changed its shape and size and capabilities. The same thing was happening at the back end in what was then called telephone exchange, starting with operator-assisted calls, electromechanical exchanges, crossbar exchanges, and so on. The entire technology improved, not only in terms of the speed of dialing or ease of communication, but also in terms of distance. From intracity to intercity to national to international dialing and international calling, the things continually improved. While all this was happening right from the early days, a different technology was also being worked upon, and that was wireless. So in 1897, wireless and telegraph technology were put together to create a wireless telegraph system, so that now you could send signals to places which could not be connected by wire. And so From that point, the next step of wireless telephones also was very logical. And that is what happened when wireless and telephones came together to create wireless telephony. But then these equipment were rather large, awkward, and had very limited capabilities. Lot more technological developments had to happen before the next step could come in. What were some of these? Were the development of electronics, from vacuum tubes to transistors to integrated circuits to large-scale integrated circuits to microprocessors and so on. And when all those things came together, it was possible to create something which was more practical and what in today's time we call mobile telephony. The first mobile telephone was demonstrated in 1973, but it took quite some time before a commercial service could be rolled out. That service never became really popular, and today nobody remembers the first generation telephony service. It took quite some time more before 2G, second generation, came in 90s. But that was also the time when the computers and the internets were developing. And the need was felt that while you could transmit mobile voice, how about transmitting mobile data? But 2G was a technology which was essentially developed for voice. So data had to be sort of forced onto that technology. And what came out was 2.5G in the early or late 90s, where you could transmit a little bit of data on the mobile services. This was improvised to 3G, packet switched, which could transmit greater amount of data, but was essentially an extension of 3G, an extension of 2G. So thereafter, a completely new technology had to evolve, and that became known as 4G, which was essentially a basically digital technology, IP-based network focused only on data and not on voice. What did we use these mobile telephones for? In the days of 2G, the technology was essentially used for person-to-person communication. One person talk, the other person listen in real time, and that's about all. But then, as the time progressed, came 3G. So in addition to voice, now we could use data. And that is where people started using social medias, things like Facebook and Twitter and WhatsApp, where you could create something, a message, a content, a voice recording, anything, and send it to the other end to one or more person, but it didn't have to be heard at the same time. It could be stored and then heard, and as it was convenient, but still this is between two people, two persons. When 4G came in, the things changed. Now you didn't need the other person to do things. People could simply take their phones, the smartphones, and interact with a machine, with a computer, and that is where the rise of streaming services like YouTube and others, or all the transactional services, banking, trading, e-commerce, and all those things started developing. So now you have come to a stage where you don't need, it's no longer person to person, it's a person to machine, a person to a server. So if you look at all this, what has changed at a glance? From 1G to 5G, obviously the speeds went up from really small numbers to much, much larger speeds. And in 5G, it would go even beyond. And in terms of application, starting from simple analog voice, coming to digital voice and a little bit of data, broadband, faster and better streaming and other services, everything continued to evolve. And so we come to 5G. What is 5G? 5G is getting to a stage where you don't even need one person, and it is completely between machine to machine, one machine talking to another machine, which is what we call Internet of Things, machines talking to each other on internet. And if we really look at this and look at the applications, it could be used anywhere or everywhere. In cities, in manufacturing, in agriculture, in energy, health, and so on and so forth, all over the place. So 5G is really getting towards more of an automation. Yes, it will obviously be used for the usual things which we do with 3G, 2G, 4G, but there is much, much more that needs to be done with 5G. We require radio signals because everything we're talking about is about mobility and about radio. So now if we talk about radio, we come to spectrum. And when we talk about a spectrum, the electromechanical spectrum, electromagnetic spectrum has a wide range from frequencies going down from few kilohertz going all the way up to picohertz and beyond, terahertz and even beyond, going from radio waves, visible light waves, ultraviolet X-rays and gamma rays. Obviously, talking about radio waves, about the spectrum that is used for radio. So in 5G, the spectrum which is proposed to be used is broadly classified into two groups, sub-6 gigahertz and millimeter wave or frequency going beyond 24 gigahertz and above. There are certain peculiarities we will just talk about when you start getting into frequency ranges which are really, really high. So in near future, what we may look forward to is 5G services in the sub-6 gigahertz range. Talking about sub-gigahertz frequencies, other services of 2G, 3G, and 4G also use the spectrum in the same range. There is also the Wi-Fi. The wide bands here are the bands which would be used for 5G, starting from 700 megahertz into various bands, and then a large spectrum between 3300 to 3600 megahertz. But as we increase the spectrum, the frequency, as we can see on the top. So talking about the radio spectrum, there are two major characteristics which one has to worry about: propagation and penetration. As the frequency of the spectrum increases, the penetration and the propagation reduces. And this is where the compromise occurs. So penetration, as the frequency starts going up, the absorption through obstacles keeps increasing and the signal is lost on the way. So the signal strength would be so small that it would not be usable. So when we talk about 5G, penetration becomes a major issue that needs to be addressed. The other issue is propagation, the distance through which a signal can travel and be strong enough that it is usable. Again, as the frequency increases, the distance is becoming smaller and smaller. So when we get into the 5G range, the distance through which the signals could travel, useful distance by which the signals could travel, is also becoming shorter and shorter. And how do you overcome this? In the traditional 2G, 3G, 4G signals, one uses what is called a macro cell, a large tower with a big antenna mounted on the top. And the range through which this signals would travel would be starting from 300 to 400 meters all the way to 4 or 5 kilometers. But the small cells at 5G would not be able to send the signals beyond a few tens of meters or maybe 100 meters. And that is why you would end up needing large number of antennas, what is called a small cell, just like a street light, where you need multiple street lights along the road to make sure it is illuminated fully. So the small cells would be mounted on top of a street light, on top of an electrical pole, or wherever convenient, but not too far from the user. So you have multiple number of small cells. The UE is the user equipment, the whatever equipment which is receiving the signals. These small cells will collect the signals, aggregate them, and pass them to the core or the central servers where the signals could be processed. So in a larger, more complex way, we would have a number of small cells of various shapes and sizes outside, inside the buildings, somewhere out on the field. All the signals would have to be brought together, transmitted over optical links of different kinds, aggregated, and then processed. That is what a 5G network in whole, in totality. So where would 5G be used for? Now 5G cannot exist or would not be of any use unless we have all the other supporting technologies developing at the same time. Many of these technologies are not directly related to 5G, but they would greatly depend on 5G, and 5G would greatly depend on it. And when you put all this together, almost everything that you are familiar with would sort of start using 5G. Any applications that we today talk about or we would talk about in the future, starting from mobile phones, drones, photography, maps and location-based services, entertainment, satellite, health, e-commerce, whatever we talk about, everything will start changing using all these technologies. And that is what the whole IoT solution set comes in. And that is where the fun of 5G begins. But having done that, people have already started talking about 6G. What would that 6G be? But then that's something probably topic for the next seminar. So we would leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. If you can unshare your screen. Yeah. Arnab, you want to take over and do Q&A?
Yes. So there have been a bunch of questions around a few common topics. So I'll just maybe I've kind of I mean, combine them into a few. So first question was, when will 5G services be launched in India, and what are the important steps that will happen before that?
So, obviously, one of the step would be the auction of the spectrum, which would happen. But assuming that the spectrum auction happens, the bottom line is, when would this technology be really practically usable and commercially worthwhile to implement? That requires, as I said, development of many other things around that can profitably or usefully that can use 5G. This could involve devices, various gadgets, appliances, whether we talk about autonomous cars, whether we talk about various health equipment, so many other things. These are also getting developed right now in a variety of ways. So 5G as a technology might be around, but to make it available to people in a practical form would take time as all these things develop. And as they develop, their capabilities improve, their costs go down, and they become more and more commonplace. So it will take a few years, starting from hopefully next year, that these things start coming into being and starts getting developed to a level where they become commonplace, just like smartphones are today.
Okay. Thank you. I think the next set of questions was around, I think you've addressed in the presentation, but what frequency bands will 5G be initially launched in India? I know it's there in your presentation, maybe you could discuss that as well.
Yeah, so basically the frequency bands which would be used would be the existing bands which are already in use. Some of those could be used for 5G also, starting from as low as 700, 800 megahertz, going up to 900, 1800, 21, 2500 megahertz. And then possibly some bands beyond, as I had written, 33 to 3600 hertz. So those are the bands which will be used for 5G till a few years later when we get into the millimeter wavebands.
Okay. The next question was around how do you see the evolution of different applications in India with 5G, across enhanced broadband connectivity to machine-to-machine communication? I mean, how do you see the applications evolving in India?
So 5G would have, any technology coming, have 2 or 3 specific drivers that makes them successful. One of them, which is much more relevant in developed economies, is the cost. Whether those technologies are able to reduce the cost of doing that particular thing. Obviously, mechanization is one part of it, but autonomous car, one of the big driver in autonomous, big motivation for autonomous car again is the cost. If you could eliminate a driver, you could eliminate a lot of cost associated with travel. So some of those drivers may be less relevant in India compared to they are in the developed economies. On the other hand, there are some of the drivers which are much more relevant in India compared to elsewhere. Areas such as education, health, entertainment. These are the areas which are much more important in our day-to-day life in India for a variety of reasons. And these are the areas where I believe first the 5G applications would happen, and of course the security. These are the places where the applications will start happening. other areas where 5G is supposed to be useful, whether it is in factory automation, in diagnostic of equipment and machinery, etc., would happen, but probably slowly, because they may not be economically justifiable as easily as they would be in the Western economies.
Okay. There was a whole bunch of questions around this topic, but I'll just summarize into one thing, like a common interest question, which is, do you see any impact on the environment due to 5G deployment, both from a point of the radiation being harmful, or from any other point of view? There was a whole bunch of questions, so I've just summarized into one.
Yeah, so that's a question which is always asked. As I said, the 5G frequencies are not any different than 2G, 3G, 4G frequencies to start with. Anything in excess could be harmful. Even sunlight in the excess is harmful. You don't want to go and stand in the sun forever. Similarly, any radiation in excess can be harmful. But the question is, are the mobile tower radiations, or for that matter, most of the wireless radiations that come out, not only from mobile telephony, but also from radio and TV and television and so many other things, microwaves and so on, are they strong enough to be harmful? And as yet, there is no evidence or no scientific evidence to show that they create any harm to human beings or to any other form of life, be it insects, birds, vegetation, or anything. So I do not believe that 5G is any different than 2G, 3G, 4G, or radio and TV. And if these have been around for more than 100 years, and we have not seen any significant effect on any form or any damage, I don't see why 5G alone would be different, because they are radio waves. There is nothing different about it.
So a couple of more questions, and this is something I'd like to put myself, in the interest of everybody in the audience over here. With 5G coming in, a lot of technologies and applications are going to be developed. So, what would be your advice for people who are thinking of doing startups and all those kind of things, if they are interested in leveraging the impact of the deployment of 5G in India?
I would think that 5G technology would require a completely fresh way of thinking about automation, about data collection, data analysis, and what one can do with that. And then at the end of that, the issue is going to be, what is the cost benefit, what is the practicality, and how do you commercialize this? And that's not a very easy question to answer, because there are a whole lot of variables and a whole lot of technologies involved. Like my last slide showed, whether it is cloud computing, edge computing, blockchain, AR, VR, AI, all these things have to develop. So it's a vast field. In which area one would want to look at, which area one would like to develop, is something which is quite open. So I don't think in a short sentence one could come up with a very quick answer on this.
Okay. So Ashok, that's pretty much the kind of categories of questions that were there on the so I think thanks a lot, Sanjay, and for the very informative, very interesting presentation. If there, Ashok, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we will have more questions answered after Professor Karandikar's presentation.
Yes, there were some questions regarding research in the institutes, but I thought that would be more appropriate after our presentation.
Yeah, you're right. So can we get Professor Karandikar to share a screen? And yeah,
yes.
Good.
So let me share.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I think Sanjay gave a very great background coming from, right from the olden communication days up to 5G. So that has made my task a bit easier. But I will be a little more technical. So pardon me if if I go into a little more technical at some times, but I will be happy to take up any questions during the question answer times. Now, as Sanjay rightly mentioned, that the way in which the mobile networks are growing, we have seen a huge growth in the mobile subscriptions worldwide, and the mobile data is really the primary growth area in the last 5 years or so. We are seeing now in the mobile broadband subscription and year-on-year growth of 15%, and basically the traffic is now entirely moving from the voice to the data. And the data, of course, brings the diversity of use cases. Arnab, for example, asked what could be some applications, and I will elaborate. But of course, for the operators like Sanjay's Jio, there has been a concern for the lower ARPU as we move towards the data. Now, we of course have seen the evolution of the telecom. But with 5G coming in, we see a great paradigm shift. And why would I call it as a paradigm shift? And this is illustrated here because the 5G actually gives you 3 use cases, which are in some sense complementary, but also in another sense, contrasting. And the 3 cases are, one is of course our normal usage of mobile broadband, and which is increasing the throughput, going from few kilobits to megabits to gigabits, and that we can call as an enhanced mobile broadband. But 2 other important use cases are there in 5G. One is what is called as low latency, which the ITU has standardized in what is called as ultra reliable low latency. And the third is massive machine to machine communications for the Internet of Things. Now, these results in the huge diversity of applications, which were not earlier supported by, let's say, 4G, which was primarily 4G. You can primarily view it as the mobile broadband kind of applications, which of course get enhanced in the 5G domain. So this slides actually really show the capabilities of 5G systems. Users are likely to experience the data rate which could almost match the fixed networks. Like by fixed networks, I mean the cable networks and so on. Much more enhanced capabilities than 4G in terms of spectral efficiency, which can go up to as high as 30 bits per second per hertz, very, very low latency, and very high mobility support, almost going up to 500 kilometers per hour. Then, of course, as Sanjay talked that in the 4G, we started having from human to machine communications. I mean, in his one slide, he's illustrated from human to machine communication. In 5G, we could actually go from machine to machine communications with very large number of devices in a very small area. And the number of devices could be as large as 100,000 and even more than that. And this actually, this slide on the right hand side actually shows some of the parameters and with its comparison to 4G. IMT 2020 is what is the official name of 5G, and IMT Advanced is like the official name of 4G. And you could see here on this slide that what are the enhancement of the key capabilities that is going to occur in 5G in terms of peak data rate, in terms of user experience data rates, in terms of traffic capacity, connection density, network energy efficiency, and so on. Now, how do you get this? So this is, as I said, is a little more technical. So the 5G actually changes the complete radio. I mean, often this question is asked whether I require a new base station and I require a new phone. Yes, the 5G will require a new base station and a new phone. And this is enabled through a completely new physical layer, what is called as new radio technology. One of the important aspects of the new radio technology is that it uses a large number of antennas, what is called as massive MIMO. In fact, 5G could support up to as high as 256 antennas, particularly as Sanjay had spoken when we go to higher frequencies like in millimeter waves. There are improved coding techniques and plus the OFDM structure, which was there in LTE as well, is actually made quite flexible, where the subcarrier spacing can go from 15 kilohertz to almost to 40 kilohertz. Then there are new spectrum bands, which was already told to you that we are now talking of millimeter wave frequencies from going from 24 gigahertz, which were actually not used in the 4G spectrum. Then larger bandwidths. Today, for example, in the 4G, we could use only the bandwidth of 5 megahertz or 10 megahertz or 20 megahertz. But in the 5G, we could use bandwidth ranging from 5 megahertz to almost as high as 400 megahertz if you are going into the millimeter wave. But even below sub-gigahertz, you could use 50 megahertz or 100 megahertz of bandwidth. The third paradigm shift that has occurred in the 5G is increasing softwareization of the networks. Now we are moving for more and more softwareizations, and the core is completely going to be software running on the commodity hardware, as opposed to very specialized hardwares in 3G and the 4G. And this is due to the use of technologies such as software-defined networking and network function virtualizations. I think this was already spoken by my colleague Sanjay, that there are primarily two operating frequency band, one below sub 6 gigahertz, which are the same frequency band, very similar what used in 3G and 4G. But there are other frequency band, what is called in 5G FR2, which is the millimeter wave. And as was already spoken, since in millimeter wave frequency is higher, the coverage is going to be smaller, and therefore the millimeter wave band is primarily may be used for creating 5G hotspots, while the sub 6 gigahertz, like 3 gigahertz or 700 megahertz frequency band may be used to provide a larger coverage. So 5G spectrum band provides a combination of providing a larger coverage and at the same time, using hotspots with the millimeter wave frequency band. As I already said, that we can go up to the carrier bandwidth as high as 400 megahertz, and with carrier aggregation in millimeter wave, you can go up to 1.2 gigahertz as well. And with all these higher frequency band, what it means is that the user can get a very high data throughput on his or her cell phone, almost going up to 100 megabits per second. And this will be an order of magnitude higher than what we are able to see today in the 4G. There is one more feature which is there in 5G, is extremely low latency. So for example, some of the applications like vehicle to vehicle communication we are using. Of course, self-driving car is a more futuristic application, but it is very likely that 5G could be used for vehicle to vehicle communication, essentially what is called as V2X communications. In V2X communication scenario, the data that you want to transmit may be very low data, but the latency, that is the delay that you require, needs to be extremely low. Similarly, in applications, for example, robot-based surgery. So when you are, I'm not talking of telemedicine. In telemedicine, you may require a high bandwidth also. But when you are doing a robot-based surgery, you want a very high, very low latency, very small delay in order to take the action. So these low latencies would be possible in the 5G, and in a wireless communication, this in some sense a contrasting use case compared to achieving a high bandwidth. And to do this, again, many innovations have been done in the 5G technology in terms of, for example, the frame having a flexible slot structure, where in the 5G the entire transmission time interval is divided into slots, just like in the 4G. But in the 5G, these slots are divided into mini slots as well, where if you want to send an urgent data, you will be able to make use of the mini slots. Similarly, typically in wireless communications, a user will be able to send a data only by making a request, and when a request is granted by the base station, then only you can schedule your data. But in 5G, a grant-free transmission is also possible if you want to send some data urgently. Similarly, the processing time also have been reduced significantly in the cell phones, making the low latencies available. So these are some innovations that have been done in the 5G, which actually reduce the delay significantly. The third important innovation that has happened in the 5G is the use of these software-defined networks and the network function virtualizations. If we see in the 4G, then in the 4G, both control plane and data plane are tightly coupled. But in the 5G, we are going to see a separate control plane and separate data plane. For example, the control plane functions are going to be nodes like AMF, SMF, and so on. In fact, I'll show it in the next slides. So this is going to be like a 5G core. And in this 5G core, as you can see, some nodes are the control plane nodes and some nodes are the user plane nodes. And this separation enables the scaling the networks by the operators in a very, very efficient way. The second thing is that all these are software nodes running on commodity hardware, and therefore increasing softwareization of the core networks also enables the scaling of the networks in a much faster way. Unlike the traditional 3G or 4G networks, where you require specialized hardware nodes in the core networks, and if you want to scale the core networks, then you need to increase the capacity of those nodes or add those special nodes for capacity improvement. The other aspect that is possible in the 5G is the use of network slicing. And network slicing is nothing but the virtual networks. So for example, in the 5G, in the same physical networks, you could create different slices. For example, you could create slices for machine-to-machine communications. You could create a slice for the broadband communication. You could create slice for applications, let us say intelligent transportation. You could also create a slice for a healthcare-based networks and so on. And these slices could be provided, different quality of services. So therefore, for an operator to deploy various applications and use cases, and as I said, because of low latency applications, because of machine type communications, and because of mobile broadband, an operator is likely to have deploy several applications and use cases, for example, intelligent transportations and IoT networks for agriculture sectors, in the healthcare sectors, and so on. And these could be easily created by in a scalable fashion by using slicing the networks with different quality of service guarantees. Now, let me also take you to that how 5G can be used to address one of the rural broadband connectivity issue. As you know today, that in India, while in the last 3 years or so, we have seen a significant upsurge in the mobile broadband communications. Today, for example, we have 1 billion mobile subscribers, but only about 500 million we have today the mobile broadband with the 3G or 4G kind of a connections. We still have a large addressable mobile broadband market, which can be tapped, particularly into the tier 2 and the rural India. If you look at in the developed world, you know that in the developed world, the broadband was primarily enabled through wired communication infrastructure like fiber or DSL and so on. In countries like, emerging markets like in India, the mobile was one of the primary phones for many people to use for the voice communications. In fact, in countries like India, not all homes had access to the wired telephony. But when the mobile communications was deployed, this became the primary phone for many people. In the same way, for many people today, the mobile is the primary access for accessing the internet or the broadband. We are not, in many homes, we still do not have access to fiber to the home and so on. So essentially what it means is that the cellular technology in the West was primarily used for mobility. But in India, the cellular technology has become the primary source for using either the voice or the broadband access. Now, if you see the mobile telephony standards evolution, then they have really focused on mostly the urban usage scenarios, like very high throughput, like in the 5G. Now we are talking of peak data rates of 20 gigabits per second, mobility of 500 kilometers per hour, and so on. And variations in the use case scenarios in countries like India and so on have not been factored in the specifications and the design. And there are also the issues which operators face in terms of compelling business case for using such technologies to target the rural areas. So we need to really rethink in terms of going forward for either 5G, that we need, the low cost solutions. We don't have the backhaul everywhere, so we need to think of the low cost backhaul solutions. We also don't need very high speed mobility like 500 kilometers per hour. We do need, of course, the mobility, but not very high speed. But what we really need is with limited mobility, but high throughput. At the same time, we need very high energy efficient solution. For example, in India, where we don't have 24/7 electricity supply at all locations, we also need efficient energy solution, not just for the cell phones, but even for the base stations. And in the rural areas, we need large coverage area support. So with all these requirements, From the Indian side, from the TSDSI side, for example, as Ashok has mentioned that we were one of the founders of the TSDSI. TSDSI has taken this concept of low mobility large cell LMLC to IMT 2020 for one of defining use case scenario. So I had defined earlier in my slides, there are 3 use case scenarios: eMBB, enhanced mobile broadband, MMTC, machine-to-machine communications, and URLLC, ultra-reliable low-latency communications. So under the eMBB, enhanced mobile broadband, the LMLC is one of the use case for the rural broadband scenario. So this becomes, a rural eMBB scenario, which takes care of the specific scenarios in our country of large coverage area in the rural, low mobility, but at the same time requiring, the large bandwidth or the high throughput. So this actually was one of the contributions that we could make to take the Indian requirements onto defining or should I say refining the specifications for the 5G. We also took it to the IEEE standards, and IEEE is now working on a new standard P2061, which is actually defining a network architecture for low mobility but highly energy efficient architecture. And this architecture is also focusing on small cells like Wi-Fi hotspots or millimeter wave hotspots, which are backhauled using the wireless and getting connected to an optical point of presence. So basically, these 2 requirements, we have taken it from the Indian side to the international standards bodies to take care of the specific use cases that we have in the Indian context, where the cell phones are now being used as the primary mechanism for accessing the broadband by majority of Indians who do not have access for technologies such as high-speed fiber to the home. So therefore, it is important in the Indian context that enhanced mobile broadband gets deployed in the specific scenarios. There are other things, which are happening. I will just take, 2 minutes to specify this. In the emerging mobile landscapes, 5G is going to live with 4G as well. So there is going to be an increased network densification. Operators such as Jio are going to deploy Wi-Fi hotspots as well. So we are going to be having a scenario where we are going to have a multiple radio access technology, 4G LTE, Wi-Fi hotspots, 5G, and they are all going to get connected to a unified 5G core. Today we see a fragmented control in the RAN. So the LTE is being controlled separately, Wi-Fi is being controlled through a Wi-Fi controller. There is going to be a need for a unified control of these radio access technologies being controlled through a cloud controller. And this is now also going to get enabled through standards such as IEEE P1930, where a multi-RAT SDN controller sitting in the cloud will control all the radio access technologies through virtualizations. So whether it is a 5G base station or a 4G base station or a Wi-Fi access point, they will all get virtualized and will be controlled through a multi-RAT SDN controller. As someone in the question answer also mentioned, that while from the India side we took some of the 5G use cases and refining and contributing to the 5G standards, and we are also now driving some of the IEEE 5G standards, a pan-IIT effort is also going on in developing the indigenous 5G testbed. In fact, since we see that a 5G deployment worldwide is likely to slow down, perhaps as a fallout of COVID-19, this also gives us an opportunity for Indian organizations to develop the technology, to develop Make in India, and then deploy an indigenous technology. So this is a multi-institute project The goals are essentially to enhance the R&D capabilities in the country, boost the product design and manufacturing, and of course, encourage the telecom startup. This is an end-to-end test bed. This is developing the prototype of a UE, that is a cell phone. This is developing the prototype of a 5G NR GNB, that is a base station, and also a 5G core with support for the Wi-Fi access point. So this is what I've shown, an effort which is between IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, IIT Kanpur, IIT Hyderabad, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Center for Excellence in Wireless Technology in Chennai, Samir, and CDOT. This is a multi-institute efforts from our team in IIT Bombay is developing software-based 5G core networks, and we hope that by the end of this year or early next year, we will have many components of these 5G testbed ready, which could be then field trialed. So this is all from my side. So I just want to summarize that with the 5G networks, we are going to have multiple use cases coming up due to the technology offering enhanced mobile broadband, machine type communications, and low latencies, and which will be the driver for many applications use cases. This technology is also going to be very useful in the Indian context for the mobile broadband. In fact, as we see that the mobile broadband is a primary broadband for most Indian homes, and therefore having high throughput and having a very good way of accessing the internet and downloading and streaming the video, watching the TV programs or the movies itself would be a good application driver and use case in the Indian context, because as I already said that most Indian homes are not having access for fiber to the homes. And finally, as I said, that with increasing softwareization, that the core is almost entirely in the software and residing in the cloud on commodity hardwares, and now the move towards open radio access networks also, this also gives an opportunity for the Indian companies and the Indian institutions to leapfrog into developing the prototypes, because you now don't need very specialized hardware or the specialized chips to develop the technology, as was the case, let's say, in the 3G or also, to some extent in the 4G. So there lies a huge opportunity both for development as well as deployment and for applications and the use cases. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Abhay. I have a bunch of questions which I have summarized across different questionnaires. And first part of a set of questions is specific to Abhay, and then the rest are for both Abhay and Sanjay. So the first set of questions are, of course, you answered the questions of the areas of research going on in IITs and other academic institutions in India. You mentioned the test bed and the development of this, the new radio and the core and other things. So I guess that summarizes the work that is going on in IITs or academic institutions, or there are other areas that you'd like to highlight?
No, I think that primarily summarizes the work. The work also complements different capabilities at different institutions. For example, the radio technology is being developed by IIT Madras and IIT Kanpur. In fact, the baseband is getting developed at IIT Kanpur, while the RF is getting developed at IIT Madras. Then the core is being developed by IIT Bombay, our team, and similarly the antennas, etc., are being done by Samir. So I think this is actually using the complementary expertise that exists at the different institutions.
Okay, thanks. Another question was, if 5G can work in the sub-6 gigahertz band, then why do we need 5G in the millimeter wave band?
Yeah, so I think that is a good question. So, there is always a trade-off between, to some extent, between coverage and capacity. So, in the lower frequency band, we can get a good coverage, but then the bandwidth is limited. So since the bandwidth is limited, we will not be able to get that high data rate. Our peak data rates or even the user experienced data rate will be somewhat limited. But in the millimeter wave, when we go into the millimeter wave, the problem is that because of the penetration and propagation characteristics, the cell size will be limited. But since we are talking of 24 gigahertz and so on, the carrier bandwidths could be very large. In fact, with carrier aggregation, we can go up to 1 gigahertz of bandwidth. And with 1 gigahertz of bandwidth, we could easily get 20 Gbps kind of throughput. But then with the 20 Gbps kind of throughput, our cell size will be limited. So millimeter wave band will be used for hotspots. So, this will be like what we are seeing Wi-Fi hotspots. So we could have these small cells. So where millimeter wave bands are being used for hotspots. But then, 700 megahertz band or 800 megahertz band will be used for covering a large area for providing, let us say, vehicular type of mobility, where you may not get gigabit speed, but then you will get good mobility and a good coverage.
Okay. The next question was around the topic you addressed about hotspots. What would be the role of Wi-Fi, especially the newer technology like Wi-Fi 6, with respect to 5G, especially for these hotspots? How would they coexist?
Yeah, so, the Wi-Fi will also coexist with this, but as I already mentioned, that 5G provides, certain, so there are two things in the 5G, because, you can control the quality of service very tightly. So therefore, for premium applications which require a very, tightly controlled quality of service, you obviously would go for the 5G kind of application. So for example, as I said, for very tightly controlled low latency for applications like AR, VR, or vehicle to vehicle communications, where you require guaranteed quality of service or guaranteed bandwidths or guaranteed delays, then you go for technologies like 4G or 5G and so on. But where you need best effort, high throughput, then I think one can go for the Wi-Fi hotspots or Wi-Fi access point. So as I already mentioned, that we are going to see the multiple radio access technologies coexisting. The operators are not going to throw away their 4G investments and 4G base stations. So that is going to remain. Wi-Fi hotspots are also going to be there, where you need best effort broadband, let's say in the rural areas and so on also, or at college campuses and so on. So they will remain. But at the same time, where you need guaranteed quality of service, premium broadband, premium applications, and many other use cases where the 5G hotspots or millimeter wave can be also deployed. And where you need mobility, you of course need the cellular technology. So we are likely to have the multiple radio access technologies coexisting.
Thank you. There was a question around the FR2 band, the 24 gigahertz and higher. That is also used for many other applications such as automotive radar and so on. Have the frequency bands been allocated, taking care of the other applications already?
Well, unfortunately, so in India, we are having this problem that while 24.25 to 27.5 gigahertz band has been assigned as the 5G band by both 3GPP and WRC. This band, we have an issue with that. That I believe that a DOT is working out with our space agencies and ISRO, and also with the defense. So once we sort out the coexistence with space communications, then I think we would be able to get that band assigned, or rather allocated for the 5G, and then only the auctions can happen. Currently, I think the operators are going to, the likely scenario for the operators in India would be 3 gigahertz band, particularly from 3.3 to 3.6 gigahertz. And that would be the band which is likely to be used by an operator. And apart from refarming of the existing, sub 1 gigahertz band. But 3.3 gigahertz is the likely candidate in India for 5G.
Okay. The next question was, has ITU accepted our recommendation for the LMLC, the low mobility large coverage?
Yes. It is a part of now rural EMBB. So yes, it is a part of rural EMBB scenario.
It's part of the ITU standards already.
Yes, it's a part of IMT 2020. Yeah.
Okay. There was another question that you described how 5G achieves low latency. Is there a fundamental, what drives the fundamental limit to latency? Is there a limit to that, to how low it can get, and what constrains that?
No, the wireless, so fundamental limits really come from the wireless channel. You see, in today, for example, in optical fiber, we can go up to terabits. But in wireless, earlier from few kilobits, we have now reached up to few megabits, and perhaps we will go to few gigabits. And that is primarily, because of the very, notorious characteristics of the wireless channel due to multipath and so on. And similarly, the same issues happen for the latencies, because for the latency, in order to reduce the slot structure, you also get into the synchronization, time slot synchronization issues. And with the different users located at different distances, you cannot reduce the slot size to too low, else you will have the problem in terms of managing the synchronization. So, I mean, there are always limits in terms of the communications over a radio, both for throughput as well as for latencies.
Yeah. The next question was around security. What are the security concerns around 5G, especially whatever we hear across the world, regarding 5G deployment?
The security concerns over the wireless are similar, whether it is for the 3G or the 4G or the 5G. And the 3GPP standards have taken care of that by defining, various protocols to address, in terms of encryption and so on at the wireless radio channel. Then, of course, but nothing, nothing can be foolproof. So therefore, as you know, that the applications also ensure end-to-end security by using their own encryption or protocol mechanism. I mean, the security is an issue which keeps, evolving. Also, I think there is always a trade-off between the security and the flexibility. In order for certain applications to really deploy and run, so therefore, some level of security have to be ensured even at the application level as well.
Okay. The next question was, around, I know both you and Sanjay have addressed this, but maybe like to explain this once again. Why do we need a larger number of towers and base stations in 5G versus limited number of higher towers?
No, no. Towers depend upon two factors. Depends upon the frequency band and the coverage that you want. So if we go for millimeter wave higher frequencies, then obviously as the cell sizes are small, then if you want like large number of millimeter wave hotspots, then obviously you would need that many you know towers or and if you go for lower frequencies, then you can cover a large coverage. Then maybe you need lesser towers. But towers are also needed if the subscriber density is very high. So, if the subscriber density is very high, then obviously you need to break a geographical area into a number of cells. In fact, the whole concept of cellular technology has come because of this, because it enables you to we call as a frequency reuse. So you can reuse the frequencies, and then same frequency can be reused in the neighboring cells and so on, and that is how you can cover more number of subscribers. So so that is actually, otherwise, for example, in a TV tower, for example, there could be just one tower because that is just a broadcast. So if you put a very high transmitter power, then you could just broadcast it to a large number of users. But when you need two-way communications and you want more number of subscribers to be connected, then you need to create these number of cells. So the number of towers depend upon the coverage, the subscriber density, and the frequency band on which you are operating. And typically an operator needs to do a careful RF planning, and the capacity planning, and that determines how many number of towers and what will be the location of these towers.
Okay, thanks. I'm addressing the next set of questions to Sanjay, but Ava, you can chip in whenever necessary. So Sanjay, one of the questions was, how can 5G help towards making mobile broadband more affordable, especially for the economically weaker sections of the population, and especially in rural areas and so on?
As Abhay said, if you have a larger bandwidth, that means if you can carry more data, and if you don't need that much data per user, then you could have more number of users share that same amount of data that is coming through. And since 5G is capable of handling larger quantity of data, larger amount of data, obviously to that extent, per user cost for data or per byte per user cost of data would be lower once the technology has matured and it's not in the initial stages where the cost is high because of high developmental cost. But once the technology is mature, yes, the cost, if you look at it, that cost of data per GB or per MB in the early days of 2.5G and then 3G and 4G has been continuously coming down. And that's the reason, because the technology makes it more efficient to transmit the same amount of data, or for the same cost, larger amount of data spread over larger number of users. So cost per user comes down.
Okay. There was another question related to, we seem to be going to be late in terms of 5G deployments with respect to the rest of the world. Do we see any economic impact of that?
Actually, no, we are not late. See, it's a question of what do you call late and what do you call early. Today, China is way ahead of us in using electric cars, or America or Europe. We are still getting into the electric car regime. Similarly, in 5G, similarly in many other technologies, some of the other nations or some of the other economies are ahead. It doesn't necessarily, it's a question of a few years here and there, and it's a total overall development that is required, not just one single point of 5G. So as I said, We are also talking about various other technologies that have to develop. The entire ecosystem has to develop around it. And obviously, depending on different levels of economy, different level of local needs, different level of technical as well as economical development, these things would be somewhat different in one country to another. I don't think it's necessarily any disadvantages.
Okay, the next question was around what would be the the killer app which would for 5G which would motivate the operators to deploy it quickly and as widely as possible. Is there any particular killer app that you see?
I don't know. I mean, I can talk, but I think the killer apps, really come after, when the deployments happens and then, people start using it, and then new and new applications actually, keep coming up. But as I already said that with the enhanced mobile broadband and with the broadband throughput increasing, this itself would be a killer app for most Indians. I mean, you could then stream video and so on and effortlessly. Then this itself is no less a killer application. But as I said, with the technical capabilities in terms of IoT and so on being there, and again, low latency applications, and its multiple use cases, I think there is a huge opportunity for innovations that can be driven around this. And as I think Sanjay has also mentioned, that the uses of the data that tremendous amount of data that gets generated when the network speed increases, then deployment of the technologies like blockchain and artificial intelligence, etc., can also drive many new applications and use cases, so which even we cannot think of today.
Okay. Ashok, we are doing okay on time. Time for a couple of more questions.
Yes, we have time, another 3-4 minutes more. Yeah.
Okay. So there were two questions. One was a little technical thing that how is the massive MIMO, multiple number of antennas going to help in 5G? What is the benefit of that?
No. Massive MIMO simply increases the multiplexing gain, and that is why you can increase the throughput. It also, of course, increases the diversity also. Now, what I want to say is that the real question is that why can't we use this massive MIMO in, let's say, 400 megahertz to 700 megahertz? Actually, what happens is the antenna sizes are typically proportional to the wavelength. So when the frequency increases, when we are talking of like 3 gigahertz or 20, or in millimeter wave, 24 gigahertz. So there, since the frequency is high, the wavelength is small, and therefore the size of the antenna will be small, and therefore you can have larger number of antennas, and therefore you can have more number of antennas even on your cell phone. So it becomes feasible to have those antennas. So ideally, one would like to have large antennas even at 700 megahertz, but it is practically not possible to have, because 700 megahertz will have a larger wavelength, so your antenna size will become larger. So you cannot have many antennas either on the base station or on the cell phones. So, and with the large number of antennas, of course, you have both diversity and multiplexing gain. So then you can get high throughput.
Okay. So I'm going to address one last question to Sanjay, and that is, with the deployment of 5G, are we going to see a much improved quality of service as far as the data experience is concerned?
Quality of service particularly is the issue of reach of the signal where the user is, which I talked about the penetration and propagation part of. And a lot of that is limited by physical limitations in being able to get an antenna close enough to the user, or get the signals penetrate all the way where the user is. That challenge can actually be more with higher frequency, and because of that, reach of the that is where the question of small cells and large number of small antennas being put all over the place comes in, which is obviously a large physical exercise and activity to be able to go install these antennas, get the power to those antennas, get the fiber to that antenna, and so on. But yes, technically, once we are able to do that, the quality of service is sure to improve, which is actually true for anything, just not 5G, but even 4G, 3G, any technology.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay, thank you, Abhay. I see a lot of late questions regarding to health impact, but I think those questions have been addressed before, so I'm not going to raise that again. So, Sushila, you can take over.
Thank you, Arnab. Thank you to all of us speakers today. It's been an absolutely fascinating session. Particularly, I think many amongst the audience would have been quite surprised to know that a telephone was something that was tethered to a wall at some point of time. Today, we learned that 5G is a whole new technology. It's not about incremental changes from things that we already know. We learned about softwareization of a lot of the pieces that go to creating 5G. We saw that 5G is not just about wireless technology, but also about a whole slew of technologies that go along with it. And therefore, it's all about an ecosystem that has to work together very well. We looked at the question of why 5G is important to India, especially from the point of view of access to those who do not have access. And very, very heartening to note that international standards organizations and the international standards relating to 5G are taking on board the recommendations and the needs of countries such as ours. We saw that there are many new opportunities for developmental implementations and interventions. And we also saw that there are many new business opportunities that are going to arise as a result of the implementation of 5G. So thank you all very much. Sanjay, thank you. Professor Abhay Karandikar, thank you ever so much. And Arnab, thank you very much for holding this whole session together. Many thanks to our audience. All of your questions have made it interesting for us to host this webinar. As Ashok said, we do have these webinars every Saturday. Please do look out for them and join us. Once again, thank you all.